Okay, there we go. Like I said, it's the 2022 special session for the Unified Government Hollywood Casino Grant Fund process. And I know a lot of the commissioners have already been through this presentation and heard it several times, but I want to make sure the new commissioners and mayor understood kind of a brief history of how we got to where we are today. So with that, I'll get started. And it kind of all came out of Healthy Communities, Wyandotte. And this process started in 2009 when we found out that Wyandotte County ranked last in the state for both health outcomes and health factors. And this wasn't a good deal. And so at that time, Mayor Reardon convened a community group to plan and respond to this. And after 18 months, this community group published the recommendations for a better future in 2011. This document was adopted by the strategic plan of the UG in August of 2012. That's when the commission adopted this plan. And as part of the development agreement with the Hollywood Casino and the Board of Commissioners, the Hollywood Casino contributes $500,000 annually to the unified government. Formerly, the Schlitterbahn Vacation Village used to contribute to this as well through their development agreement. That organization's now gone and defunct. So with that being said, we want to move on to this casino grant. What are the eligible activities for this grant? And keeping in with the intent of Healthy Communities Wyandotte, the focus really is on a couple of things. And number one, we want to increase the knowledge and the long-term changes that enable our county and community members to do two things, which is most important and really the crux of the grant. We want folks to eat healthy food and to be physically active. And the applications that for those folks who apply for this program, for these casino grant funds, should demonstrate cultural relevance, address opportunities to do those two things, increase knowledge, and improve the food environment in Wyandotte County, and support active living through using our environmental infrastructure. And our environmental infrastructure is things like our streets, sidewalks, our trails, our parks, anything that can help people become physically active. Now, some of the grant requirements: you have to be a 501c3, a nonprofit. And this units of local government, such as the UG, our own departments, public school districts, community college, Donnelly College, folks like that are ineligible for this grant. And you also must demonstrate that you'll use the funding primarily here in Wyandotte County. This grant is designed for our citizens, and the beneficiaries should be our citizens of Wyandotte County. Those are some of the main focuses on the grant requirements. Now, what are some of the grant restrictions? Grants will not be awarded to things like a capital campaign, an endowment campaign, or an annual fund drive. You can't retire debt with these casino grant funds, or you cannot use it to fill the hole of your operating deficit. And you cannot use it to directly support individuals. And this also includes scholarships, things like athletic scholarships as well. You can't use it for lobbying activities or legislative-related activities or political campaigns. And you can't use it for things that specifically benefit the members of, like I said, athletic, veteran, fraternal, sectarian, or religious groups. Now, equipment expenses, unless the equipment will directly improve or have really a major impact or be part of the beneficiary program of the organization's ability to provide and deliver services. That's the only time that the casino grant funds would be allowed for that. Now, some of the grant guidelines that we look at and we use, we want the grant funds to leverage additional funding. And this can be both public or private. What we want to do is maximize these funds' potential. And we also want them to demonstrate alignment with the Board of Commissioners strategic plan. And this includes the social services, the healthy community recreation goals of our organization, and the Healthy Communities Wyandotte Improvement Plan that was coordinated with the health department. We would like our casino grant recipients to collaborate their efforts among other providers and programs. We would like to once again maximize these casino grant dollars, and this can be done through that synergy. We'd also like to demonstrate an effort to minimize duplication. We don't want to give the same funds out to folks that are doing the same thing. We want to make sure that we use these funds to contribute to all goods and services that'll help us reach those two goals of eating healthy and becoming physically active. You also should have clearly established measurable outcomes, and you need to be able to report those and monitor those, because those will be checked with the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation, the folks that we hire to administer this grant, and I'll talk a little bit about them in a moment. We also need programs that reach two important things here: at-risk folks and underserved populations. These are the primary folks that we would like to reach with these grant dollars, and probably the folks that will benefit the most from these casino grant dollars. Requests for general operating support, we'll only consider this if it's going to significantly expand the services of these 501c3 organizations. Now let's take a moment and look back at the grant numbers for 2022. Last year, remember, it was another COVID year, and we had about 66, we had 66 grant applications that we received. And after those were vetted thoroughly by the commission and mayor, we had 57 grant recipients that were funded. Now, the average amount awarded was $13,926.47. The highest grant that we awarded last year was $52,500. And the lowest grant amount awarded was $955. Now you can see that the amounts are both high and low, and there's no specific amount that you must award to a recipient. Also for 2022, this year, there's going to be a total of $477,500 available for our grant recipients this spring and summer. There is no restriction on the minimum or maximum size of the grant. Like we said, we went all the way from $52,500 down to $955 last year. So it's kind of all over the board, and that's okay. It depends upon the need of the 501c3 and what they want to do to maximize those funds for our community. The activities funded by the grants must be completed within 1 year. Now, this is critical. Grant recipients have to report what they're doing with these casino grant dollars and how they're achieving their goals. And they will also have to turn in December a midterm report that tells where they're at midway through the grant year. Now, since 2013, these funds have done a lot of amazing things in our community, and we've awarded about $6 million total in casino grant funds since 2013. Now, the review and selection process, we work with the experts. That's the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation. We've hired them to vet through these grant applications. They will review all of them, and they'll review them for eligibility. And then they'll in return submit the list of eligible applications back to the Board of Commissioners. Now, they will also perform due diligence, and this will include things like site visits. They'll interview key staff, board members, and partners, and the collaborators and funders. Now, the application review will include the program budget and the sustainability plan for these 501c3s who receive the funds. The review and selection process will also include the Board of Commissioners as the selection committee. Our commission, which includes the mayor and our 10 commissioners, will have the final say where these funds go. This year, each commissioner and the mayor will designate in writing how they wish to allocate their share of the funds. This year's total amount will be $43,409.09 each. Now, we did have a few carryover funds last year for a couple of commissioners, and Mayor Garner this year will have additional funds to allocate. I will get with each commissioner and the mayor and let them know exactly their total number of funds to allocate in 2022. Now, the final distribution of these funds has to be approved by a majority vote of the Board of Commissioners. And this will take place at a commission meeting in late June. And we'll look at the dates here in a moment. Matter of fact, we'll look at the dates right now. So the timetable for this year's casino grant process, the grant applications will be available online starting February 21st. And we will use the Unified Government Strategic Planning Department to get that out through all of our social media outlets. We'll make it well known like we do each year. Also, the application, this process will be placed upon the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation's websites and outlets as well. Now, a very important date that everybody needs to know about is this March 1st date is the grant information session. This grant information session will be a 2-hour session where we, the Unified Government and the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation, will go through the entire grant process. That time for that is going to be 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. and that will be a Zoom meeting this year due to COVID. But the dates and times of all of these things will be sent out and will be placed on our social media outlets. Now, the application deadline after that grant information session is going to be April the 8th. So you got about a month and a half to apply for these casino grants. And I always recommend that you apply as soon as possible. Now, when the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation receives these applications, they'll review the eligibility recommendations and they'll complete this process after almost a month, and this will be May 6th. Once they complete that, they will get those applications and vet those, and they will get those applications back to us. And then that's when the mayor and the commissioners will review these grant applications. Now, that's about a 2-week process there from May 9th to May 20th. So you have plenty of time to review those, ask questions, and we can get those turned back in. Those designations are due to us, to me, on May 20th by the mayor and the commissioners. And after that, the distribution of the proposed designations to the commission will be June 3rd. And then those will be voted on by the majority vote of the commission on Thursday, June the 30th. And after that, once they're selected, we will send all of those casino grant recipients over back to the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation, and they will send out a notification to the grant recipients, those who are receiving 2022 casino grant funds, on July 15th. And that will also include their monies to complete their grant projects. I know that was quite a bit of information in a short period of time. If anybody has any questions now, I'd be more than happy to take those.
Are there any comments or questions from the commission?
We have 2 comments.
Commissioner Ramirez. I'm sorry, Commissioner Stites.
Thank you, Mayor. Chuck Stites, District 7. When originally you said that it was a $500,000 grant, and then you said that it was $477,500
Yes,
is what would be available. Why the 22.5 difference?
it's a good question, Commissioner Stites, and I should have spoke about that in my presentation. That's the contractual amount that we pay the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation, who are experts in vetting and finding out eligibility, and also doing due diligence on the grants. That's the amount, sir, that we pay them annually to do that work for us.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Commissioner Bynum.
Bynum.
Thank you, Mayor. It's Melissa Bynum, at-large District 1. Mr. Cross, it's time for my annual question. Are you able to secure for us, all of us, from the Community Foundation, any of our grantees from 2021 who owe us a midterm report, any that owe us any kind of report from any prior year? And are they able to gather for us any grantees that are perpetually either tardy or have reports missing? Can you ask them for that and make sure all the commissioners have it?
Commissioner Bynum, I knew you were going to ask that question. I had a phone call with them 3 days ago.
Thank you.
That's exactly what we're going to do. We will line up all of that information, and I will disseminate that to the mayor and all the commissioners as we usually do. One thing, while I have you on the line here, I want to talk a little bit about mayor and commissioners is I asked the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation where they stand in regards to a lot of 501c3 nonprofit groups really took a beating during COVID, well, like the rest of us. And they stated they have seen some groups of those nonprofits not really fall off so much and out of service, but starting to work together, which is going to be a good thing. So you might see some dual applicants or organizations that are working together this year. And that'll be a good thing. And these casino grant dollars will certainly help them do what we need them to do here in Wyandotte County.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Emrick. I always look forward to this time of year because I've been through 2 of these, I believe. And so it's these funds go to very well-known organizations in our community that are doing very good things. The only question I have for you is, because I know as we all, the whole commission and the mayor, we get the same list of organizations that we allocate money to. Is there an easy way for us to keep track of which commissioners give to what organizations or the mayor? Because I know in the past, Commissioner Johnson and Commissioner Burrows have called me and said, oh, how much are you giving to RDA? How much are you giving to Argentine or what have you? Just to make it easier for us. I don't know if that's a possibility or not.
No, that's certainly a possibility. And you'll notice on that timetable, how there's kind of gaps of time in between those dates. That's exactly what that's for. So you can work through the Deanna Segui and Lisa Rangel in the commissioner's office, and they'll keep track of that for you. And that'll give you plenty of time on the timetable to do exactly that. And certainly if you ever have any issues or questions, or you want to know where somebody's at, I'm kind of the keeper of those records, along with the ladies over there in the commission. So you can call me at any time as well.
Okay, sounds good. And thank you for everything you do for this. This is a good program that does good work in our community. And so thank you for all that you do for it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Commissioner Davis.
Will the training that's on March 1st, 2 to 4 be recorded? I'm just thinking there may be some folks that may not, have access to it. And since it's virtual, that may be an added benefit.
Absolutely, Commissioner. That's a great idea, and we will make sure that is recorded. And then I'll work with Ashley Hand and Crystal McFetters in the Strategic Communication Office, and we can put that online so folks can watch that if they have questions. And also with that, Commissioner Davis, the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation, they encourage these applicants to call them anytime, all the time. Make sure when you talk to folks about this, that they have a number over there, and I'll make sure that everybody has that. We put that out each year. Call them anytime if you have questions. They can call them or they can call myself. And we'd be more than happy to help anybody at any phase during this process. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question. The marketing, if I missed that, I apologize. What does that look like as far as marketing, getting the information out to our community and those interested organizations that would like to have a crack at getting these grant funds?
Mayor, that's a good question. And each year we use everything we have at our disposal through our Strategic Communications Office. So all of their outlets online that they use, Twitter and Facebook and the UGE News, we use all of these outlets. Let's see, Wyandotte Daily Online usually picks this up. The great thing about this, Mayor, is this has been going on since 2013. So a lot of folks and organizations in the community know about this process, but we still want to try to reach out. And I would put it out there that if anybody has any additional suggestions or ideas for other outlets, please contact our Strategic Communications Office and they'll get them on there as well.
I believe there was a question or response from Ashley Hand. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Ashley Hand, Director of Strategic Communications. We do have several new channels at our disposal as well. So we are very eager to work with the community and get this information out earlier, including things like the Citizen, which will be mailing this spring. So that'll be a great opportunity, and the timing will be quite perfect for this grant cycle, as well as things like notifications in our BPU bills and other tools that we've been developing to reach more people, because our online audience is great, but is not a big enough population. And so we're eager and continually looking for new tools. So To Mr. Cross's point of, if you have additional outlets or places that you would like us to be, please let us know. But we will do kind of additional advertising and promotion of this, I think more than what you've seen in past years. So very excited for that this cycle.
Thank you, Ashley. Commissioner Bynum.
Thank you. Melissa Bynum, at large District 1. Emmerich, will you clarify that organizations that are a 501c3 can act as a fiscal agent for another organization that's not a 501c3?
Yes, that's when folks come into that situation, and I'm not an expert on that. That's why we hired the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation. But I can certainly get those who have questions for that, Commissioner, to Denise St. Omer and her team over at the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation. I don't want to speak out of turn here and say something that's not correct. But when we've had that happen several times, where organizations will be that are 501c act as fiscal agents for those who are not. So if you have anybody in that scenario, please send them to me and I will get them in touch with the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation and make sure they can check on their eligibility.
I have a second question.
Yes, ma'am.
The commissioners will see all of the applications, correct? Including those that the Community Foundation might deem ineligible. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am. They send a letter over when they do their due diligence with all of these applicants. They will send a letter over with those organizations that they may have questions about or issues to educate the commission on and or solicit input or feedback from that organization or us.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
I got a couple more questions for you, Mr. Cross. The funding. I know you mentioned the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation. Do we have any idea of that selection process, what it looks like? Is it predicated on the ask amount from those applicants, or is there another criteria that they take into consideration on what the actual funding streams to the individual candidate organizations, what they stand to receive as part of this grant? I mean, how does that process work?
Well, sir, when we go through the grant information process, the session we will have on Zoom, we'll get a lot of questions about how much I should ask for, and will all the commissioners and mayor look and read every application? There's some things that we can't answer, but we certainly encourage those folks to kind of do their research and make sure. I mean, you don't want to come into a $477,500 grant process and ask for $1 million, because that's probably not going to happen. What we encourage those folks to do is look at past grant recipients in like 2020, 2019, 2021, look through those and kind of get a feel of how much commissioners are giving out to each grant recipient, and what kind of flow is, and look at this, maybe the size of their organization and what kind of goods and services, their capacity to provide those. Those are all the kind of criteria and variables that these organizations should look at to get a feel of what their ask should be. That's a great question, though.
Well, I guess where I was going with, is there a cap? You know, out of that amount, is it capped at all to make sure that organizations, you know, that it's kind of spread equitably, or how does that work?
They are not capped, sir. Each commissioner and the mayor this year will have will have 43,409.09. If a commissioner or mayor wanted to give their entire amount to an organization, they may do that. If they want to give none to an organization, which we had about 7 or 8 organizations who did not receive any funding last year, they may do that as well. So there's no amount that a recipient or person with an organization with an application can ask for. There's no set amount with how much or how little. It's up to the commissioner or mayor.
Thank you. This is my last question, and this is really important to me, is the accountability piece. I know that Commissioner Bynum talked about the reporting. Are there any penalties when we talk about those organizations that fail to report on time or not at all? Or what about those organizations when we track how they're using this money according to what they said that it would be intended for? What does that accountability look like? And are there mechanisms in place that we use to make sure that these funds are being used for their intended purposes?
Yes, Mayor. Emerick Cross, Assistant County Administrator. You're exact. That's a great question. And the main thing we do is if these organizations do not turn in their midterm reports or do not use the funding like they stated they would in their application, they usually don't receive any funds the next year. That's one of the main things. Now, as far as getting funding back from an organization, we've had that happen. We've had organizations that went defunct and returned their funds. So that's probably about the limit to the accountability we have. We can certainly explore other avenues in which we want to hold folks accountable. And this is the commission's process. So if we want to change that or add additional variables to this equation, we can certainly do that.
Thank you. Yep. I'm more in line to make sure that there's a strong accountability mechanism in place when you're talking about funds and making sure that they're really being used for the intended purposes based on what the applicant presented, and leaving this commission and mayor with that belief that the funds are going to be used for those good purposes that they're being dwelled out. I'm more in line on making sure that we have some good checks and balances in place and penalties if they fail to report, as well as some additional accountability mechanisms to make sure that we're being good stewards of this money and that the people that would benefit are actually benefiting from these funds in an equitable way. So that's a conversation I'd like to continue to have with our commissioners and our administrator.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Bynum.
Thank you, Mayor. Melissa Bynum, at-large District 1. I appreciate your comment. I will say that as the director of a small 501c3 nonprofit, these guidelines that have been created through this grant program are not terribly different. In fact, they're quite similar to most funders that I write grants for, with reporting requirements and caveats in the application itself that basically tells me, from the funder that failure to produce reports in a timely manner is going to preclude me from requesting any further dollars from that foundation, et cetera. So the requirements that are in place are quite similar to those of a lot of other funders. And that is why I believe these 501c3 organizations that make application for this money should all have a pretty good understanding of grant reporting requirements. And frankly, sir, it's why I always ask that same question every year, as far as making sure that our grant recipients are in fact turning in their required reporting. But I appreciate your question.